everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. This time, yet again, we've got George McMillan III. Welcome back, George. George, can you hear me?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, welcome back. Welcome back.
I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, everything's excellent here. As good as can be, considering the geopolitical situation that the world has got itself into, or sleepwalked itself into, as some people like to say.
Yeah.
You're looking very bright today. Having a good day today. Did you get all your paperwork done?
I hope so.
Excellent.
Yeah, I still gotta run up to. I'm still waiting on. I left the United States. I didn't realize my international driver's permit expired. I got licenses here in Thailand, but I need I think I need an IDP to start crossing borders.
Yeah.
So I should get that hopefully in a few days. Then I'll go up and I'll get the visas and start my journey. So we're trying to get as many of these slide sets done as possible. Yeah, these aren't short. But when you're building theoretical models, you're talking about how a lot of different things are interacting. So, yeah, this is not a new show. This is a theoretical model analytical channel, and yeah, there's no short way to do this.
Yeah.
Well,
we just got to power through it.
Yeah, we just got to power through these. Unfortunately, they take an hour and a half each time. But yeah, so we went through, started out this video section the other day on section 1, going over the 6 points. We're not going to go over them again. It started by Wesley Clark talking about there's a policy coup in the United States. He said the PNAC crew, which is Project for New American Century. And this is General Wesley Clark when he was on his 2007 campaign. And he was just kind of startled at how relative small group of people have taken over the foreign policy during the Bush years. And he was running for president in 2008. We all know Barack Obama won.
Yeah.
But then what is surprising is how little foreign policy actually changed with a totally different president.
Yeah.
Okay, President Bush and his father, George Herbert Walker, and then Prescott Bush. It's a big Yale family, and we're talking about the Yale Grand Strategies movement actually controlling OSS as it transitioned into CIA. I did that video with Monster, and we talked about it, the Monster Consortium video on my channel. We also covered it on this channel in a longer version of it. So here, so then we were talking about section 1, the purpose of moving EU and NATO east was so the United States stays relevant, so the global political center of gravity doesn't shift. So where I wanted to start this one was I threw it in the comment section the other day on Working Brothers channel of how I want to transition it, because these things are a lot of information all at once. So yeah, the significance of that middle section of part 3 here is that just moving the EU without NATO component, it's plausible alternative policy path for the West, and it begs the question of why it wasn't taken. But when you answer that question, it brings up a lot of kind of startling conclusions. The neocons in the West throw out that Russia will invade at any moment as a total red herring to expand the EU as a Trojan horse to usher in NATO to stop a house offer integration of Germany and Russia. Okay, before I threw in the UNS article about it's not Ukraine, the war is actually over separating Germany and Russia. So in the previous videos, a lot of them, Felix Rex, the ones I did with Matt, the ones I did previously here, it's everything about stopping the pipelines going from Russia into Germany is to stop the biggest the biggest and cheapest energy producer in the world from uniting with the biggest industrial power. So Michael Whitney focused on just Germany. And then in my 6 power center theory, that again, I did on several videos, Felix and with Working Brother, is that it's not just the pipelines going to Germany. It's the infrastructural network going through the Caucasus region into Iran to build the Chabahar port in India. Mm-hmm. It's about the big Silk Road project where China integrates with the Caspian Sea region and with Russia, and the Hokkaido Sakhalin Railway project that they desperately wanted to stop.
Yeah.
Because if all the other power centers unite with Russia, integrate, through the pipeline and rail. And
subscribe, everybody, and like for more technical difficulties. We lost you there, George, for a bit. We lost you there. George?
5 industrial.
Oh, you're back? Are you back?
Yeah, I'm starting over.
Okay. Okay, take it from the top. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Probably too many people on the internet around here. But anyway, then that would be 5 power centers against one power center in North America with the United States. So that's where we went in the other videos. So now in the transition to get to this last section, so it's to stop Haushofer integration, which is, of course, Dugan talks about that in his book, the basics of geopolitics. So here it's, why would Russia build a massive natural gas pipeline to feed German industry, then militarily invade Europe and destroy it? Of course, they wouldn't do that. So that's not what the Wolfowitz doctrine was afraid of. They're afraid of the integration. I threw in the Kantian peace triangle in the very first video I did with Matt Bracken to foreshadow this slide set, because I did this in May. I did this slide set basically in May and June of last year for the Felix Rex show. Yeah. We just never got around to it. He started doing his documentary. I had some things going on. I didn't want to do it for a bunch of reasons anyway. But we're covering it now. So I updated everything. Felix is done with this video, so I'll be back on with him, I think, in a week or two. So getting to the next, so I threw in the Kantian peace triangle because there's the big Ukraine and Russia. And what I've been talking about since last year on the Felix Rex shows was you could have had an economic integration of Russia and Germany, and then you would have mutual economic interdependence. And once people become interdependent, they don't go to war. So that would have been the peace path that Jeffrey Sachs alludes to in all of his videos lately, because he was pushing for that one. And then he got somewhere with the Clinton administration, didn't get anywhere with, the same people that Wesley Clark talks about. And then he resigned from the whole project and went out on his own. And I guess he's working out of Prague lately. So we want to get to, the United States chose the disintegration of Europe rather than the integration of Europe. So then let's see, the modern version of the Haushofer plan is based upon the simple idea that more pipelines and capacity that Russia builds to the German world, the more they become prosperous and mutually dependent on each other. Mutually dependency in wealth generally lowers the risk of war rather than increasing it. So what Jeffrey Sachs in his videos is miffed at is why they chose a path that Mearsheimer and Cohen, there's a guy named Sussman in Portland University that argues something similar, not as famous as the other guys. But yeah, there's a bunch of people that have been arguing that the United States chose to move NATO east and take over Crimea. We went over in the other maps about the number of,
the impossibility of taking over Crimea, basically.
No, I'm not into the military version of it. I'm into the economic version of it.
Yeah.
But the reason why that is a total no-go is Russia's Black Sea Fleet's been in there since 1783, Catherine the Great, and they don't have another warm water port.
Yeah.
And Rostov on Don, well, they only have two rivers that flow south, the Don River and the Volga River. They're connected at Volgograd through the canal, but that's where, more than half of Russia's mineral and agricultural products come out of. So you can completely destroy the entire Russian export economy by basically controlling that one area. The St. Petersburg area, has always been blocked in by NATO and the NATO fleets. So when NATO started doing Operation Seabreeze in July 2006, I think they do it every July, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's to totally harass the Russian Black Sea Fleet. So there's a number of ways, because you're blocking in Russia's ports, their agricultural shipments, and their pipelines, and you're forcing everybody to pay in petrodollars. That's the real gist of this. It's using NATO as a as a bill collector, actually. So then, the second part of the statement at least is the conclusion that U.S. and U.K. moved NATO east to stay relevant, because you can't get the global political center of gravity to shift and then have the United States be the sole superpower. There would be sharing superpower status with Germany and Russia, but at least it would be 4 industrial power centers integrated along the north against China, but also feeding Japan in the Far East because of the Sakhalin Hokkaido projects. But Russia would be the big player, not the United States. But the world could be peaceful under that circumstances, maybe. Again, you can't use the crystal ball of the path not taken because we didn't take it. I just got to throw it out there as a hypothetical, just so people can realize it was one thing or the other. The West, for good or for bad, chose this policy path. Obviously, Professor Sachs, Mearsheimer, and Cohen, probably some other people, were against it, but this is where we are here. So it leads to the conclusion that U.S., UK, NATO moved east to stay relevant. Even moving NATO east not only risks war, but makes war inevitable, as Mearsheimer and Cohen argued. The RAND documents were about that inevitability. That's why in each segment of the slide set and video series is needed in order to understand how we got here and why the U.S. NATO wanted to take over Poland, Ukraine, and Georgia as match sets, and in particular demand the Zelensky take over Crimea and eject the Russian Black Sea Fleet all along. This was planned decades ago.
Conspiracy theories. Russian propaganda.
Thanks for working, brother, to do the video tech on this slide set series.
No worries. Glad I can help out.
All right.
That last sentence is the most crucial one. The entertainment factors may drop off in this format, but the information value goes way up in half the time, and everything is a trade-off.
Yeah, it's other formats. I mean, we just tried it. No one knew how my system was really going to work. I had no idea. I have no idea how to shoot YouTube videos.
Yeah.
That's really painfully obvious to everybody that's watching me evolve, or whatever you call it. But it's a learning curve.
Same here.
Yeah. We're going through the learning curve.
I'm a starter as well, and so far I think we've done a great job. Especially considering how we have to tiptoe about some of the details of what we're discussing. Shall we get into today's religious versus ideological shift of the West?
Yeah, so let's go to slide 100.
Yeah. We're already there.
All right. So what needs to be okay? So now we're going from overseas to domestic, and when I watch a lot of foreign news, and the foreign news keeps on talking about, as foreigners tend to do about a region that they're not familiar with, they tend to talk about it as if it's a monolith, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
The United States did this. The United States did this. And then people attribute a motive to an outcome, and they can't break it down to which interest groups are doing what. And a lot of it's incompetency, and a lot of it's design, and a lot of it's a combination of both. And we're trying to break that down here.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's been occurring in the United States is that the far left, for lack of a better term, I'm going to use the word Fabian socialists, have been trying to use the U.S. Constitution to shift the United States towards socialism. In the Gramsci School of Thought, I got to go into a little bit of background here that's not in the slide set.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Gramsci Long March Through the Institutions network, he's saying you not only need to change the economic formation to a centrally planned economy, which, if you know anything about linear programming, moving to a central planning means allocating resources scientifically by a billion matrix. So if you've ever done anything in linear programming, a billion by billion matrix is so unmathematically unwieldy, because every time you invent a new product, your resource allocation would shift, and it would take 2 years to rebuild the mathematical equations, and you would have to totally stop the economy. In the meantime, while the mathematicians sit back, it's so laughably absurd that socialism and communism in centrally planned economies, it only makes sense to people that haven't taken a basic linear programming course. Mm-hmm. So I've always saying that they should take all these wacky socialists and utopians and start making them all take linear programming in college and get that and read the socialist calculation debates between Mises and Hayek, and and realize how absurd that was. Because the reason why the Soviet Union collapsed, in the papers I wrote for ISIS, the International Interdisciplinary Social and Economic Sciences, they're based out of Prague, is with a free market economy. If you want to build a new product, like, I was watching the Steve Jobs video the other day, or even Hewlett Packard in Silicon Valley, these guys just went out to Radio Shack or wherever, or Tiger Direct, lately, or to Tiger Direct emerged. You would just go out and buy whatever electronic components you want and start configuring it, and then start writing software for it. So that's how Silicon Valley evolved. But in the Soviet Union, with a centrally planned system, you have to beg somebody to give you the resources to do that. In a free market system, you just go buy what you need and just start networking and working with people and get support and start building your market. So what I've been writing about was the way that every key invention goes, basically since, the Bronze Age, Iron Age, all of that, was men build everything for military and hunting purposes first, because it's survival. So everything goes from tactical to practical. And once the Industrial Revolution occurs, you get good inventions. If they have a military application, the government starts spending money on it. So the government will start making large investments in strategic, tactical leading edge, so they get a competitive advantage militarily over everybody else, over their political rivals, in the region or over the globe. So once huge money gets put into a project, you get a whole bunch of competing manufacturers making their product. The military buys the first product, The second people to buy that product are going to be the corporations themselves that make it. Then the third people to buy the product is always going to be the rich people that own the corporations, because they want the cutting edge stuff. So they're, as a status symbol. So then they convert it from a military application to a civilian version. Mm-hmm. Then after they've done that, they find out what real human beings like, who makes the better products. Then the same said, 1%ers start to throw the $1 billion into mass producing a cutting edge product, that you mass produce something for a market of scale, so the unit price drops. So what's leading edge technology in one generation then becomes a Walmart product in the next generation. Well, that was taking about 30 years maybe originally. Then it was cut down to 20 years, and all NITS SC68 about accelerating this process. It comes from the Kennedy era, actually. A Harvard economist, Johns Hopkins economist, things like that. They're talking about drastically going into leading edge technology that increases labor productivity growth. And then you get greater economic growth and greater military cutting edge goods at the same time. So during the Reagan administration doubled down on that NSC 68 concept and started investing heavily into cutting edge, with Star Wars and the internet and a whole bunch of other electronic things and the military buildup. They were cutting that cycle down from 20 years or 30 years to 20 years down to less than 10 years. Mm-hmm. So meanwhile, you have to stop a Soviet economy and refigure everything.
Oh, and as George's internet cocked out. George, you back? Yeah? You look like you're back. Are you back?
Yeah, okay.
Soviet economy.
Okay, so the Soviet economy, every time, in the late 80s, everybody knows that the Eastern Europeans were driving, the old two-stroke Trabants mm-hmm. and cars like that.
Yeah.
It's a total joke. Meanwhile, with the Mercedes of the 1990s, you had this cutting-edge technology mm-hmm. that was really made for fighter aircraft. Everything electronics is always made for either fighter aircraft, code breaking, or communications equipment. It all comes from Bletchley Park during World War II when they started building radar, and then started building code breaking methodologies. Then the Manhattan Project, you needed computers to start doing the fast calculations. Also, AT&T and IT&T in global communications, you went from the old switchboard operators, in 1900 or whatever, to actual computers doing the switching very fast.
Yeah.
So it's from a handful. It's from a handful of industries. It went from tactical to the big industries to practical, and now everybody has a computer. People have computers in their pocket now, right? Mm-hmm. So this is how that technology, and just to use the cell phone as an example, flat screens and all this circuitry it's all invented to fit in fighter cockpit aircraft. It's not invented to be a phone.
No.
Yeah.
You're conspiracy theorists. I'm sorry, but there's so much material in the last two paragraphs of your monologue that could have been really good jokes. So I'm really holding back all the corny jokes for this comedy show. Yeah. But I'll let you continue from now.
Yeah. So the Soviet Union with central planning could not stop their whole system to even reproduce and reverse engineer a Trabant nearly to the level of a Mercedes. So because they couldn't keep track of those cycles, the Soviet Union went kaput and had to transition to a market economy. So it's that transition where the United States came in and put in their oligarchs. Yes, they get to upgrade their economy to Western standards, but the West, by putting these oligarchs in control of all the major industries in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, they actually replicated Richard Authy's research curse program. Of course, Richard Authy was in 1994 book, was arguing that you shouldn't do this. But again, the United States actually did this on purpose. That's what Jeffrey Sachs is arguing, and he's right. There's other people arguing that too, but just to give people the academic version of this, not just the conspiracy version of it. So, yeah, that's kind of a big asides off of the background knowledge off this slide set. So in the United States, as the Cold War ends, you also have the incremental socialist movement emerging in the United States. I always explain the Tubey and Kosmides document. They're from UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara. They wrote Psychological Foundations of Culture. It's a must-read in the behavioral economics field of study. It's actually Vernon Smith told me to read it way back years ago, because I was asking him some questions, and that's how I came across it. Herbert Gentis discusses the book, but the article, you can download it actually, Psychological Foundations of Culture. It talks about how the 1960s liberals got in charge of the Western University department chairs and started removing the scientific method and abandoned it. It goes on for about 90 pages, and it's very dense read. They're writing from the field of evolutionary psychology, but they're talking about how the physical sciences, engineering, physics, all the heavy mathematical STEM sciences are all in an interwoven set of theories, for a long time. Then you get into the biological medical sciences, and they have an intersecting series of theories that are all very highly compatible in methodologies and conclusions. So they've been narrowing for a long time. They're arguing that as soon as evolutionary biology gets into the social sciences in the field of social psychology and sociology, all of a sudden the scientific project stops and becomes a big, huge mess it just becomes a big, huge mess. Well, what I did to straighten that out was and I talked about it in the earlier videos, was I used the Hume-Smith model and the Marx-Engels model, because they're the only people that wrote on all foundational political and economic and geopolitical levels. Because after the Cold War ended, you should have gotten rid of not only the Marxist philosophical theories on the abstract philosophical level, but also on the concrete social scientific level also. What the university social sciences did was they did the opposite. They threw out the free market, what I'm calling the Hume-Smith argument or models, and they went to the Marx-Engels theories for equality, and they threw out the measurement systems. So all I did was just saying, wait, the Hume-Smith models have all been radically upgraded with post-Darwinian, post-Freudian psychological theories, and in the field of economics has put everything into crazy mathematics, from general equilibrium theories to solo swan endogenous and exogenous growth theories, where you have dynamic modeling between economic growth rates of change and population growth rates of change that I can spread to all the other disciplines. And all the other scientific frameworks they're all also, both the micro psychological frameworks and the macro frameworks, they all have some kind of constructive, destructive behavioral effect dichotomy.
We discussed some of this in the first couple of videos we did, if I'm not mistaken, yeah? We'll leave a link to the playlist up here somewhere.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So let me go. I want to get on
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this.
yeah. We've got a lot to go.
So what the social science, what I did was just, I can move the method. Aristotle's 6 forms of government has that value neutral, constructive, destructive behavioral dynamic to it. So once you realize that other theorists in the other disciplines actually have that same type of modeling, and the professors don't know about it, all you need to do is just convert the language over, and the models actually fit. I wanted to go meet up with Herbert Gintis, who wrote Bounds of Reasons Pushing for Such an Alignment, and he didn't realize the methodologies existed. I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan, not in the United States, so I've been publishing out of Prague. Not the United States, so I never got to go meet him. And then, of course, with my luck has it, the old school professors have been dying. As I get time to maybe contact them and figure out where to move this, yeah, they die. Whatever. I have like the worst luck ever. So with the Tubin Kosmides article referenced, now we get into the shifting politics of the United States. You have incremental socialist professors moving forward with incoherent theories. Does it matter or does it not? Well, it's if people want to know why American foreign policy is so chaotic, it's the destruction of the university system. So you have the old Protestant coalition. It used to be the old Protestant and conservative Democrat running the United States. Kennedy, JFK, there's no way he would be a right-wing extremist if he were to run now. He couldn't run. There's no way he could run in the Democratic Party in the United States now. It's shifted. So the United States has become more secular, more agnostic, more atheistic, and this is drastically shifting American politics. So as the United States wins the superpower, it's becoming more new left, again, Frankfurt School type socialist, as the Soviet Union with Putin in power is trying to shift it back to
Russia?
Orthodox.
But yeah,
Russia,
so.
I mean,
yeah.
is shifting back towards an Orthodox country. At the same time, since the 1970s and 80s, people from the Arabian Peninsula have been spending billions of dollars on trying to build mosques in Central Asia, the old Islamic territories. And since the fall of the Soviet Union, they've been spending billions. You see a lot of YouTube travel bloggers going through Central Asia, and they're just like, oh, wow, there's these multi-million-dollar brand new mosques all over the place. It's great. And they don't know who's funding them or why they're funding it and what problems that is or isn't causing, because these things are also closely associated with Islamists, with various Islamist groups. So in the United States, you have this shift towards leftism occurring. So they're trying to wipe out Christianity both in the United States and try to prevent it from resurging in Russia. Ibn Tranholm from Denmark, the conservative talk show host, has been talking about this. I think I ran across her videos in 2015 or 2016 or something like that. You know, she's been out there. She's been, of course, thrown off social media. I probably shouldn't even mention her name, but that's she's done videos on that. Yeah, let's move. I know that's a long introduction to kick this thing off. But now let's close this thing out.
This could be a video by itself, basically.
Yeah.
Well, 101? Shall we get to 101?
Yeah, 101. Yeah, we got a little bit lag. We're stepping on each other a little bit. But people don't know what the background information on this is. Okay, the person in the comments section was like, I said the left and the far left, and he said, oh, no, the Democrats are doing this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking about neoliberals or classical liberals. When I said far left and far left, I meant exactly what I said, left and far left.
Mm-hmm.
If I meant classical liberals and neoliberals, I would have said classical liberals and neoliberals. So, all right. So now we have, now who's running the United States, or at least the legislatures, is a combination between agnostic neocons, the PNAC crowd, and the agnostic neoliberals, but who's actually setting the agendas to the left and the far left. If anybody's familiar with the United States politics, AOC and the squad, wokeism, that's all comes from the Frankfurt School, New Left, basically, where they think that society should be run by proportional representation based on race, gender, sex, and all that, what they call now is intersectionality. Mm-hmm. It comes from Herbert Marcuse's
intersectionality. That's where you cut off again. Are you still there? Hello, welcome back.
Yeah, let's move. Let's move to 102.
You cut out at intersectionality. Can you hear me?
Oh, all I said was that intersectionality comes from basically Herbert Marcuse of the Frankfurt School, and you called that movement is termed the New Left.
All right. 102.
All right. Yeah, 102. So, okay. Oh, all right. This is also something that should be really obvious. And yet I haven't heard anybody discuss even the obvious. Well, okay, outside of Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mattei, who did these videos, I don't see it discussed enough. Just ask yourself a question. Why would the United States arm these far-right groups? We don't want to talk about any ideologies from the 1930s. So we're just going to use that term far-right. It means nationalist. We're going to define it later.
Yeah.
A couple of slides.
The no-no policies.
Yes.
Or from the comment section, I heard the term nutsies, because they're nuts, basically. You get it? So they're nutsies.
Yeah. So anyway,
how to do it simultaneously.
So if you want to overextend Russia, like in the Wolfowitz and Rand papers that we did the videos on that. We showed the documents. We read over the short one, not the long one, but people can get the gist. People can look them up if they want to read the longer one. But just ask yourself a question. If you wanted to get rid of Russia and break it apart, like I went over in the, what's that guy's name in Unheard? He did a big video on that of how to break Russia apart by oblasts and into republics. If you wanted to do that on one hand, and you wanted to get rid of the far right groups on the other, what do? You arm the far right to have them go attack the Russians, which is basically what the United States, NATO did in 2014. Again, Aaron Mattei from the Gray Zone talk about it. Mearsheimer's been talking about it. Stephen Cohen's been talking about. He talked about that on the John Batchelor show for years. I'm from the New York area, so I used to listen to that. So again, this war isn't by accident. It's to get rid of two groups that they don't want. So when people ask themselves, I wrote about this on LinkedIn over the summer, since May. Why aren't the Ukrainians, pulling out of Mariupol? Why aren't they pulling out of Bahmut nowadays? Why aren't the Russians moving forward? People ask these questions. Well, if the goal is to get rid of as many of these far right nationalists as possible, then you just want to move them the most efficient way, a rational choice model in economics. The most efficient way is to move them in front of the Russian artillery on purpose.
Comedy show. Comedy show. This any resemblance to reality is truly and totally coincidental.
Yeah. So if people ask themselves, why aren't the Ukrainians withdrawing out of the encirclement in either Mariupol or Lysychansk or Bakhmut or wherever? You know, I know the people that really study the Ukraine war night and day are going to correct me on some of this stuff, but
Yeah.
basic idea is they're letting their troops get they radically decrease the number of Ukrainian casualties and radically increase the Russian casualties. Basically, they reverse them, from what I can tell, because they want the Ukrainians to keep on trying to take Crimea if they can, because if they can take over Crimea, you can absolutely, totally strangle
Russia,
the Russian economy, because everything comes out by Rostov-on-Don. Why did Lindsey Graham and Mitt Romney go to Mariupol and move in the Azov Battalion, right sectors, what a group, all those people, and go meet with them and tell them that they're being funded? Of course, George Washington University did a study on this in 2019. I posted it. Again, Aaron Matei, the BBC and the Guardian did articles back in the early 2010s. It used to be wide covered discussion.
Yeah.
You don't see it anymore, but I've been posting the videos. Other people have too, or the articles rather. So yeah, best of both worlds. The far right takes over Crimea, destroys the Russian export economy, and the worst is if that doesn't get achieved, the far right is totally, well, literally genocided out of Ukraine. A guy named Belitsky was head of the right sector, and he talked about exporting the revolution. Well, how do you keep him from exporting the revolution? Well, you get them all killed in the Far East. You don't let them go west. You send them east. You arm them and send them east. So that's the COA policy, course of action policy that the United States took. So that's what 102 is about.
All right. Rousseau. Getting
all right.
Heavy here. Oh, did we lose George? Did we lose George permanently? We might have lost George permanently.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. All right.
I could see it spin, so I stopped.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I'll be up in Bangkok. I'll have better internet once I change locations soon.
All right. Let's get into Rousseau.
All right. Original leftism and utopianism comes from Plato's Republic. They talk about having a dual state where the people in the elite in charge have women in common, wives in common, I should say spouses in common, and children in common, so they don't know who's fathered whom, because the early Greeks, or Platonic thinking was about, or at least in this one document, Plato later changes his mind, but he's batting around ideas, is the most corrupt governments are family dynasties, because they steer all the resources, children, offsprings, their grandchildren, their cousins, their brothers or sisters, their extended family, their clan, their race, da-da-da-da-da. So the whole idea of the nuclear family is antithetical to any notion of equality and not favoritism, because the nuclear family and extended family is all about favoring your gene pool above others. So you can't get to utopia unless you can get rid of phylogenetic favoritism, or phylogenetic enthusiasm is the words that Konrad Lorenz uses in On Aggression. So in Rousseau's book, Origin and Inequality, he equates inequality with the creation of property rights, where men subjugate other men, creating class divisions, and then marital rights, where men subjugate women in a gender and class division society. And since nuclear families have a favor their nuclear family, extended family, clan, and then tribe over other ethnicities, you have to get rid of the nuclear family. To get rid of that, you got to get rid of property rights and marital rights. And since property rights and marital rights are in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, the aim of the far left is always to get rid of the Abrahamic religions, but they focus on getting rid of Christianity the most, because Rousseau was in Europe, where Christianity was the dominant religion.
All right.
Yeah, we already went over Christianity is the only religion that you can have separation of church and state, because if the other, well, Islam, well, and Judaism is all about church and state being one.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the promised land, Islam. So, and if you're an atheist, then you don't believe in the church separation, church and state, because you don't believe in a church. You don't believe in religion.
Yeah, the state is God,
So
basically.
the state becomes God. And then instead of the Pope being infallible in a separate religion, distinct from, dealing with eternal matters, and the state deals with temporal matters, you have that there. So, but if you get rid of the church, then instead of the Pope being infallible, or the Orthodox, the head of the Orthodox Church being infallible, then the state leaders all become infallible. Notice the past couple of years, and this is a bureaucratic mindset. Notice the bureaucrats haven't been able to admit any mistakes in the last 2 years. We won't discuss them because you can't. Otherwise, you get in trouble if you discuss anything that's gone wrong in the past.
Even if you make parallels that it's one of that it's pestilence, even if you say that it's pestilence, you get like a medical disclaimer, a strike on YouTube, let alone other things. So yeah. You can't even make jokes about it anymore, apparently. The U.S. as the world's secular superpower. 104. Are we there yet?
Yeah. All right. Okay, so since Herbert Gintis died January 5th, kind of a little bit of a tribute to him. In Bounds of Reason, he discussed the rational actor model in his first chapter. And what he talks about is a rational actor individual has a consistent set of preferences. He uses he says the actor need not be selfish. That's referring to the book The Selfish Gene, written by Dawkins, I believe, in evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology. It's again the rationality. The reason why I went back and started talking about the early books of Plato's Republic was it comes down to favoring nuclear family, extended family, clan, and tribe. So then he starts talking about belief systems, our subjective priors, and decision theory. Okay, the way you're raised, your religious beliefs or your ideological beliefs determine a lot of this. You get into Freudian factors too, but we want to focus on belief systems. So then the next one is beliefs are primitive data for the rational actor model. In fact, beliefs are the product of social processes and are shared among individuals. To stress the importance of beliefs in the modeling of choice, I often describe the rational actor model as a belief preference constraint model or a BPC model. In my slide sets, I'm referring them to as RABPC models. With Matt, I went over the Sunni versus Shia model, how that's based on religion. When I do secular state models, I focus more on the pragmatic aspects of boosting GDP and GNP for industrial power measures, because you're trying to increase state power, like Hans Morgenthau wrote about in Politics Among Nations.
All right.
All right. The reason why you want to get rid of, you want to have wives, and why the left wants to have wives in common, so nobody knows paternity, is because ultimately men only pay for their own kids. Very simple. So men paying for their own children is the basis of the nuclear family. Females for certainty.
Nuclear family, that's where we lost you, George.
That in the
nuclear family is where we lost you.
Yeah, in the nuclear family.
Nuclear family being the basis of society is where we lost you.
Did my internet
Yep. Can you hear me?
Okay, did the internet catch up yet?
No, it didn't.
All right.
Like, it cut out totally.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Yeah. It cut out totally.
All right, am I back?
Yeah, now you're good.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah, just give me a thumbs up. All right. So if you want to get rid of paternity certainty, you have wives in common, children in common. That's what communism was about. That's why communism had to get rid of Orthodox Christianity and Islam in Asia. It didn't work. Mm-hmm. People went right back to it the second they got the chance to fill that void.
Yeah.
So Marxism is based on getting rid of nuclear paternity certainty, nuclear family bonds, to get rid of clan and ethnic tribal bonds, so you could have a global world utopia of mixed peoples. Kind of like a Kalergi plan. I think people are kind of familiar with that. Something along those lines. So the early communist books is called The New International, in order to bring all that about by working through the proletariat. Of course, that didn't work anywhere. Dineshka, Dushka, I'm pronouncing her name wrong. A professor from William Patterson University in northern New Jersey had been writing about, she switched from being a leftist, I guess a moderate Democrat, I have no idea what she is now, but she just, in her long paper called Why I'm No Longer a Leftist, she was a socialist, but her family was Catholic. She was saying her father voted for Gus, what's his name, the communist from Wisconsin, or what's his name? Anyway, I'm not very much up on leftist thought. I can't remember the guy's name right now. But anyway, she was that far leftist that she was actually Communist Party of the United States. Mm-hmm. Became kind of a more moderate, and then joined the Peace Corps and saw what she writes about how completely incompetent the Peace Corps is in her articles, mm-hmm. which is of why she's no longer a leftist. And she's like, the reason why the left shifted and changed strategies in the United States was because the working class, Protestants and Catholics in the blue collar industries never gave up religion. They just wanted a better collective bargaining agreement. They didn't care about all this leftist stuff, and so it never took hold of the United States.
George, before you get going again, we've been going for almost an hour. What do you think of the idea of cutting it off here and then continuing for the last 15 slides that we've got left in another one? Because I don't want to make a 2-hour video. I don't think many people will have the time or the patience. Let's just play some music, take it out now, a very short outro. Thank you everybody for sticking along. Like, share, subscribe. George, say bye. George.
Yeah. In the next one.
All right.